I think what collective leadership is at its core is ensuring that what you're seeking to achieve is not ego-driven. It's to just listen. It is to engage and push back and push with and work with residents to do all we can to make Heaton and Newcastle more broadly a city that is actually committed to its residents and genuinely driven by those community values.
We talk about the lack of third spaces. I mean, we've watched a number of businesses in Heaton that are third spaces and really welcome and safe spaces for a lot of us close down due to increased costs. That we lose the third spaces that not only create the antisocial behaviour and lack of places for people to go and socialise together and build that community. The human experience is meant to be connection and love and relationships with each other. And because people have been so neglected by politics and it's become a politics of hate, not to come back on the real hope, real change thing, but politics is just so negative, so pessimistic and really, really harmful to a lot of communities. And that's not how it's supposed to be.
Please note, since this episode was recorded, Hollie has stepped down as a candidate. We are grateful for her contribution to this conversation, and the episode remains a valuable discussion of local issues and community politics. References made reflect the views at the time of recording. The use of the term genocide in relation to Palestine reflects language used by the United Nations and other international organisations.
Welcome to Greens Rising, the podcast where we shine a light on the people working quietly, consistently, and often courageously to build stronger and fairer communities across the North East. Today, we're focusing on Heaton, a ward full of energy and contrast. Students, long-standing residents, young families, renters and commuters all sharing the same streets, the same spaces and many of the same concerns. Joining us are two candidates who represent a new generation of leadership for the area, Joe Gartland and Hollie Mildenhall. Both have come through years of grassroots activism and community work, and both are standing because they believe politics can and should be done with people and not to them. Welcome, Hollie and Joe. It's really great to have you with us on Greens Rising.
Thank you very much.
Great to be here, yeah.
I'm really excited about the fact that you two are standing as candidates for the Heaton ward. So it's wonderful that we've got two energetic young people fighting to get that seat for the Greens. First of all, before we get into any real detail about the campaign, I want you to tell me a little bit about your motivation in your life. I want to get to know you as the people outside of politics. So, first of all, Hollie, tell me what motivates you to do this.
I have lived in Heaton for a very long time, and I've seen growth and change, and also I've had a really good opportunity to meet lots of people who have opened my eyes to activism and brought me into activism, which I'm incredibly grateful for, and realised that this longing and change I had for a better world, there was something we could do for it, as opposed to just sitting and talking to each other and saying, like, everything's really rubbish, we're missing our third space, we're missing our connection. We could actually go out and be part of that change ourselves. And I became an activist in the Palestine Solidarity campaign. And through that, I decided to pursue a master's degree in international relations, conflict and security, which was really, really phenomenal and enabled me to really expand my understanding of politics, and also kind of pushed me to get a bit more involved in party politics and specifically the Green Party. But it gave me sort of a political education that aligned with the activist morals that I already had to hopefully create a good councillor.
I think actually being a councillor, in a sense, a good councillor is being an activist, because you want to act, you want to get things to change, you want to get things done.
Heaton to me is my local community. I know a lot of people there, and I've seen it kind of be neglected by the current councillors. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. So, Joe, lovely to have you with us. First of all, tell me a little bit about your life outside of politics.
For me, politics is at the very core of who I am and how I exist. And I mean that not in the sense of party politics or activism necessarily, both of which me and Hollie are so heavily involved in, but also just how I choose to live and engage my life. I've recently just been accepted into the fire service, which I'm incredibly excited about. And that's a very tangible way to enact the politics I believe in, which is just to help people and do some good in the world. I've also completed a master's in critical geopolitics.
What does that mean, geopolitics, in a nutshell?
Effectively, it's just international relations, really. It's understanding how the world operates and how states and people exist and coexist in that world. I could very, very easily have pursued academia my entire life, but the core of like how I exist and what I want to do in life is support and help people, like I am achieving and we're achieving on the ground with activism, and I hope to in the fire service as well.
Coming on to you, Hollie, you're also involved in local activism. So tell me about your activism outside of this campaign.
I first got involved in activism because of the genocide in Palestine, and the first campaign I joined was against the Israeli state-owned weapons factory on Scotswood Road in Newcastle. Yeah. I focus a lot of my activism on that because as a human rights activist, obviously genocide is one of the most horrific crimes that can be committed, and the UK is complicit in it, and I felt very passionate about fighting against that.
I just can't understand the level of enablement that we seem to be able to tolerate as a society. So this is community politics, and I know Heaton quite well because we've campaigned there as a local party on various occasions
for a long time,
and not been successful for a long time. But things are obviously very different now.
Yes.
We're seeing the dissolution of the power of the mainstream parties, and we stand a real chance in places like that.
I just wanted to interject really quick there in terms of what we understand to be success in local politics. Our third candidate running is Andrew Gray, and he's been running in Heaton for a very long time.
Yeah.
And what Andrew has done to an extraordinary degree is build up community relations and establish connections with people in Heaton. And we see it all the time when we go door knocking and interact with people.
People remember Andrew.
Absolutely. Andrew's an absolutely brilliant activist and human being, and we feel so privileged to be working alongside him.
So going on to a few more questions now. You both, I'm guessing, feel let down by mainstream politics. Mm-hmm. What was it that broke your faith and triggered your journey towards joining the Green Party?
I have never really been hugely into mainstream politics because I think there has been like a consistent disappointment from every party, and even parties that we've historically considered left, like the Labour Party, really aren't leftist, and especially not anymore. But again, I think watching them not only not take a stance against genocide, but actively support it and be complicit in it, that I think is a big player for me. And what made me join the Green Party was their true stance against genocide, which is a red line, as I would imagine for most people, but also their
compass.
The moral compass, but also their socialist policies and the way they are so open about being a socialist party, which we haven't seen from a mainstream party since I've been alive.
Yeah. It's interesting that when people hear about socialist policies, they tend to overwhelmingly support them. Yep. But if you use the label socialism, then it tends to get a different response. I guess that's because of the way the media have presented things and the instincts people are creating. And when we talk about the green approach, I want to get a sense for what that looks like for the people of Heaton and local politics. So how do you think a green approach is actually going to benefit the people of Heaton?
What we have understood, both me and Hollie and the wider Heaton campaign, is just absolutely unconditionally grounded in building up community and not only serving community, but working with the community to do all we can, not just to win the ward for the sake of it, not just to become councillors for the sake of it, but to become people that can work with their community, build up their community, empower their community. Politics starts with human beings. It starts with local connections. It starts with community building. And the only way you can empower people, the only way we can exist and develop is as a collective. And how that starts is on the ground, on the streets. It starts with conversing in a bar, in a cafe, in a pub.
If you can empower people, especially if that empowerment is about decision making and people's ability to influence decisions that impact on their lives, it gives people a sense of achievement. I want to come over to you, Hollie, though, because knocking on doors and talking to people can be quite a grounding experience as well. So when you've knocked on doors and spoken to residents, what are the sort of issues that they've said to you are their priorities? Across
the board in Newcastle, when we door knock, we get parking, litter issue, antisocial behaviour, which I think are kind of a reflection of how the Heaton ward, but all wards across Newcastle have kind of been neglected, and these issues aren't actually being tackled at all by the current councillors. But we also do get wider and national issues. Poverty is a massive one in the northeast that comes up repeatedly. It's such a neglected region, and it's not something that regularly gets talked about in the council chamber, which should be one of the priority issues.
Something that we're also acutely aware of is that graffiti, and parking issues, rubbish build-up, littering, those are issues that Heaton residents and wider Newcastle residents deal with on a regular basis. But those are repercussions of systemic failings. They are not the failings themselves. I mean, if there was adequate investment in public services and public transport,
Absolutely.
then there wouldn't be the requirement to have a car and to have to park it. If there were more social spaces for young people and people more generally to socialise without having to pay, then there might be less graffiti. And what that involves is far more action from the council. But it also requires work that we are incredibly involved and passionate about in building up the community and making people feel proud to work together and be a part of that community.
Yeah. And when we talk about the lack of third spaces, I mean, we've watched a number of businesses in Heaton that are third spaces and really welcome and safe spaces for a lot of us close down due to increased cost. That we lose the third spaces that not only create the antisocial behaviour and lack of places for people to go and socialise together and build that community.
Yeah, and disconnection actually breeds resentment and frustration. Greens have come second in Heaton for quite some time. What do you think is different this time? What might carry us over the line?
We have to look at the fact that it's currently a Labour stronghold and has been for quite a long time. And there was nationally some distrust or dislike of the Labour Party because of their actions.
Labour has let down ordinary people nationally and locally for a very, very long time. I mean, we knock on doors and there's an excitement about the Greens and there's an excitement about what we're doing. And that just feels brilliant. And we just are incredibly excited about what the future is going to hold for Newcastle and how we can kind of bring along the community to do that and achieve that.
So you both talked about politics as something done with people, not to them. So what does leadership mean to you in real life?
I think what collective leadership is at its core is ensuring that what you're seeking to achieve is not ego-driven. It's to just listen. It is to engage and push back and push with and work with residents to do all we can to make Heaton and Newcastle more broadly a city that is actually committed to its residents and genuinely driven by those community values. What matters is what we can figure out together and the decisions we can make as a collective. And that's what collective leadership is at its core.
And I also think that the important thing for me in it is empowering the community to become active participants. Because what we see so often is that councillors or any elected representative just does the thing. They fight the battles for the people, when in reality, politics is so ingrained in everything that we do that people can do this themselves. They can fight for their own corner, and we need to kind of give them the tools and stand side by side to empower them to be able to do that for themselves, rather than just being like, don't worry, we'll fix this problem, and give them the knowledge. So then if a problem occurs again, they have the solution.
And I've found this personally, that you end up sometimes championing an issue because it's a community priority that you personally feel uncomfortable about and might not agree with, but that speaks to the whole idea of being a representative. Thinking back again to your conversations on doorsteps, is there any particular conversation you've had with a resident you've met that was particularly memorable?
There's one that's especially memorable to me, I suppose. I'd knocked on the door and I'd said, "Hi, I'm Joe and I'm with the Green Party." And before I could get another word out of my mouth, the door began to close and he said, "I'm not interested, I'm voting Reform." And I kind of pleaded for a second. I said, like, wait, can I just ask, like, why?
Yes.
Why you're so disinterested in Greens and why you're so ardent to be voting Reform? And before I kind of get into this story, I think it's incredibly important to be conscious of the fact that I was a white man knocking on this man's door, and to be aware of the discrepancies of experience if I had not been white, if I had been a minority group or someone that Reform is and has led increasingly violent and dangerous rhetoric around. But that being said, I knocked on this man's door and kind of pleaded with him to keep it open. And I asked him why he was so committed to voting Reform. And what he didn't say was rhetoric surrounding migrants. What he didn't say was about his community feeling under threat. What he said was he felt absolutely abandoned by the Labour Party. He felt disgusted and fed up with the establishment, with media and politicians who were so distanced and so far removed from the experiences of ordinary people. And to him, what he understood Reform to be was anti-establishment party, a party that was refreshing and new and different, that was genuinely grounded in ordinary people. And what I said to him quite plainly is, Nigel Farage is a multimillionaire with 5 homes and over 10 jobs. this isn't a man who is grounded by the interests of ordinary people. This isn't a man who understands the experiences of ordinary people, and it isn't a man who has any interest in improving your conditions. There was a very interesting conversation back and forth, but the thing that stuck with him most was Nigel Farage owns 5 homes. Nigel Farage is a multimillionaire. He has that many jobs. That really stuck with me because by the end of it, he said, I'd be really interested in taking a Green Party leaflet. And he said, I'd be interested in talking to you again sometime. And to me, that reflects the value and importance of what we're doing on the ground across Newcastle, which is engaging with people as human beings and understanding that there is so much nuance around what we understand party politics to be and also how we understand the world to exist. And
yes,
I think we all know that Reform is a deceptive and hateful organisation and party. And what I demonstrated to him and what we hope to continue to demonstrate is if you are actually interested in a party that is anti-establishment and grounded in community building and people, then you vote Green.
You're both outspoken on human rights, from Gaza, as we've already talked about a little bit, to trans rights, to local inequality. Why does international justice matter in a local election?
At the core of all forms of politics is love and care for other humans, for nature, for the environment, for the world around you. And we've kind of lost a sort of connection that we have not only with each other, but with the planet and with people around us. And if we can sit as residents of Heaton and watch genocides occur, watch climate destruction occur, we can't care about our own residents, about our own city, about Heaton, if we don't care about each other and each other globally.
And if you demonstrate you can separate yourself from injustice at an international level,
For sure.
what are you going to do at a local level?
I mean, last year, I questioned the Labour Party councillors that we have in Heaton about that. How can you care about your own constituents if you're ignoring atrocities that are going on around the world?
Yeah, and likewise, it occurs the other way around as well. If people are sort of conditioned by the media not to be bothered about a big global issue, they're less likely to be bothered about something happening in their community.
And we can kind of see that in the way that people have just observed a genocide happening for over 2 years. And now that there is real fascism occurring in our city, it's kind of being blanket ignored, even by people who are on the left and do care, because it's kind of a desensitization to really horrific things being said and done against vulnerable communities.
But if you're working on the ground with people who genuinely care, as me and Hollie do, and Andrew and so many others, about not just local injustices, local issues, not only national issues, but global issues, and discuss and share how interconnected those issues are, that's how you can transform society to be something more, something better, and something far more radical that is grounded not in interests in profit or capital development, but interests in human development, in environmental development, and progress that, you know, might enable us to one day see a world that isn't just so fixated on destruction and money making, and instead is working to enact genuine progressive change.
And I know there's a bit of a Green Party slogan at the moment, but actually when you help somebody accomplish something at a local level, especially a community, build something themselves, make a change themselves, you are genuinely rebuilding a sense of hope because people have they've achieved something. And when hope returns, people actually then get the sense that they can take on something bigger and bigger and bigger and potentially have a much bigger influence on some of the issues we're talking about, rather than feeling disconnected from them, the sense that there's nothing I can do or say that will change anything.
I would just, on that, I think this is a point I really believe in, not to sound too cheesy, with the Greens rising, we'll hope will change in the background. But I think if we don't feel hope, if all we feel is despair, then there's no real point in doing anything. And I think hope really is like a core tenet of how we must exist on the left and how we must kind of drive our aims.
Coming to my final question now. Yeah. So, to either of you, why does this matter to you?
For my entire life, really, I've been driven by a core principle of just wanting to make the world a better place in some way. And for me, party politics that is grounded in kind of member-led, community-based decisions, as the Greens is a way in which you can make real hope, real change.
Yeah, I think in a similar fashion, the human experience is meant to be connection and love and relationships with each other, and the current system that we are under does not enable us to foster that and to have time to spend time and to build these connections. And I think what it's so important to me is that love is at the centre of everything that we do. It's the reason that we're campaigning in the first place, because people have been so neglected by politics, and it's become a politics of hate. Not to come back on the real hope, real change thing, but politics is just so negative, so pessimistic, and really, really harmful to a lot of communities. And that's not how it's supposed to be. It's supposed to make our lives better, to help care for each other, to build better relationships. And I think being a counsellor and being able to not only like help foster relationships, but build relationships myself and connect with more people, talk to more people. It's kind of like all I really want to do.
First of all, I want to say thank you so much to both of you for actually joining me today and doing this podcast.
Thank you very much for having us on.
And I'll have to say, it's given me a huge sense of hope that there are people like you getting into politics.
I'd also say there are so many people who are so driven by the same things we've spoken about, who don't necessarily exist in party politics, but do so much to improve the world in a better way. And I think that's a really important thing.
Yeah, grassroots activism is absolutely essential to real hope, real change. And I think it's really like important as the Green Party that not only do we work with grassroots activists, but also we're campaigners ourselves, and that instead of just talking about politics and telling people how it's done, we actually get out and make the change ourselves.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Hollie and Joe, for such an open and thoughtful conversation. What they've just shared today is a reminder that local politics isn't abstract. It's about people, relationships, and the choices we make together to shape the places we call home. If you live in Heaton and you want to learn more or get involved, there's plenty of ways to do so. From joining a canvass to simply starting a conversation with your neighbours about the future you want to see. And if you're listening from elsewhere, I hope this episode has offered you a glimpse of what committed, community-focused activism can achieve. Thanks for listening to Greens Rising. We'll see you next time.
This podcast is published and promoted by Inez Tolson on behalf of the North East Green Party, PO Box 78066, London SE16 9GQ.